Hello everyone, Aaron here from Push Square, and this week I was on the review for Alien Rogue Incursion. As a massive fan of the series, I was very excited for this one, so let's see how it panned out. Now, the Alien franchise has never had the most consistent track record when it comes to video game adaptations. For every Alien Isolation, there's an Aliens Colonial Marines. But one thing is for sure, we gamers love to simply exist in this world, whether it's for the clunky CRT monitors or the iconic rattle of the M4A1 pulse rifle. In that sense, Alien Rogue Incursion has a very unique selling point, as it's the franchise's first official venture into VR, giving us an up-close and personal experience with the franchise's iconography. Now, if you're familiar at all with the series, then narratively there aren't going to be many surprises here for you. As Zula Hendricks, ex-colonial marine, you crash land on Perdan after a soldier buddy of yours puts out a call for help. From near enough the second you step out onto its barren, snowy landscape, you realise that the station you're about to explore is riddled with murderous xenomorphs. The game has a fairly affectionate story at its heart between Zula and her synthetic companion Davis 01. Now, these are characters established in an Aliens comic series, so there are hints and nods for those in the know, but the game does a good enough job not to leave out any newcomers. I personally hadn't read the comics and I didn't really have any issues. In your travels, you're going to uncover greedy corporate experiments, mismanagement, and the complete lack of compassion for those unknowing employees. Standard stuff for the Alien universe then. But of course, you're here for the big lads themselves, and Rogue Incursion has them in abundance. The game is firmly in the Aliens camp over Alien. I personally think it should have been called Aliens Rogue Incursion, so don't come in expecting anything close to Creative Assembly's 2014 masterwork. In fact, during my time with the game, I found it to be very similar to an arcade Aliens experience, and I don't really mean that as a bad thing either, at least not entirely. Now, before I get into that though, let's talk about the VR-ness of it all. Alien Rogue Incursion isn't Survios' first venture into the VR medium, and there are some ways in which you can feel that experience and others where there's a little more work required. For starters, the way that your gear is all accessible in-world is utterly brilliant. Naturally, there's that awesome burst of nostalgia as you hold a motion tracker in one hand and the pulse rifle in the other. It's easy to imagine yourself as Ripley making your way to the Queen's Nest like in the 1986 classic. But for me, it's actually the more mundane stuff that impresses, like reading employee emails on an old computer monitor whilst using a joystick to control the cursor, or pulling out your datapad map to work your way around its metallic mazes. There's a level of immersion offered with everything being in-world, and I think the work Survios has put in here is almost understated. I also love all of the unique VR mechanics, like physically wiping blood off the monitor so that you can read it, or spine-tingling scripted moments that I don't want to spoil here. That being said, there is a fair serving of jank with Rogue Incursions, whether it's your weapon not quite pointing where you want it to go or objects clipping. Ultimately, I learned how to work within the parameters of the game's tracking system, but I found Metro Awakenings, for example, to be a bit more pinpoint. Come the end of my time with Alien Rogue Incursion though, all of the controls had become second nature to me, which I think is one of the best compliments that you can pay to a VR game. Now, once you become acquainted with the controls, it's time to explore the Perdan station. The gameplay loop essentially boils down to gaining access to new areas via cool little wiring puzzles, computer terminal access, and new tools. It's actually surprising how complex the map can be and how much you're required to learn it as well. It did lead to more than one occasion where I had next to no idea where to go or how to get to where I was going. A tad more signposting I think would have been appreciated here. I did, however, enjoy all of the moments which harkened back to the films, like an intimate surgery with a synthetic's head and a bunch of wires, of course referencing one of the only good scenes from Alien 3. There's also one particular moment in an alien nest which is among some of the best gameplay moments of the year. Now, when bullets start flying, that's really the make and break point for Rogue Incursion. There are many a moment in here where your head is on a swivel as you hear the scuttling through nearby vents, your motion tracker is about to give you an anxiety attack, and as Xenos zone in on you, you're deadly aware of that diminishing digital bullet counter on the side of your pulse rifle. As a massive fan of the series, this is exactly what I wanted from an Alien VR game. Sadly though, not every combat encounter has this level of immersion. The longer you spend with the game, the more apparent it becomes that the Alien AI is bare bones. I mean, seriously, these things are dumb as doorposts. Xenos will jump down from vents and then just kinda stand in front of you for a second, giving you ample time to coat your surroundings in acidic paint. Outside of main action encounters, the game is incessantly sending aliens your way, which starts to become more of a nuisance, especially when you're unsure of where to go. Again, there are moments where combat will have your heart thumping, but since you're facing Xenos so much, and they are pretty much the only enemy type, it would have been nice for combat to be a tad more dynamic. I would have even liked to have seen the option to hide from the aliens or engage in a bit of stealth. Your weaponry also isn't the most varied. You'll have the iconic pulse rifle and then a bog standard shotgun and revolver, which are fun enough but never quite scratch the same itch as the main rifle. I have to say though, Rogue Incursion is a great looking game with a particular affinity for dark, smoky, metallic corridors. Doesn't all scream alien like Alien Isolation does, at times looking more generic sci-fi than something ripped straight out of the movies, but when the game gets the aesthetic right, it really gets it right. I'd have loved a tad more variety in its environments, but there's nothing quite as chilling as witnessing a fleshy xenomorph egg peel open before your very eyes with a face hugger crawling its way out. Special shout out to the sound design too, with the initial beep of your motion scanner or the thumping from overhead vents, often leaving the hairs on the back of my neck standing tall. I loved how hissing pipes would often replicate the sound of Xenos, feeding into that sense of paranoia as you explore Perdan Station. Performance wise, Rogue Incursions sadly isn't the steadiest experience out there. There were times that tracking on objects looked a little stuttery, with noticeably lower frame rates as you wave your motion tracker from side to side, for example. Aliens would also somewhat frequently become stuck in walls once killed as well, really shattering any immersion. There was also an occasion where a level was stuck in lockdown, locking all of the doors, like it thought the aliens were still there when they weren't, so I had to load up a previous save and replay that segment, a particularly annoying bug since the save system is so brutal. There's nothing that ultimately ruins the experience, but there's plenty that I would love to see ironed out in subsequent patches. Alien Rogue Incursion is a solid first attempt from Survios to capture the iconic sci-fi franchise. If you're as big a fan of the series as I am, then you'll be giddy as you first get to hold your own pulse rifle. You'll shiver as your motion tracker's pulsating tones get higher, and you'll revel in the disgusting details of the H.R. Geiger-inspired alien nests. It is let down at points with repetitive and lackluster combat, trivial performance issues, and its hard cliffhanger ending does leave you with more questions than answers, but you will be hard pressed to find standout VR moments quite like the ones sprinkled throughout this fun campaign. I'm giving Alien Rogue Incursion a 7 out of 10. Thank you everyone for checking out this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you're thinking of the game down in the comments below. And as always, if you'd like to see more PlayStation video content just like this, then why not subscribe to the channel? Anyway, until next time, thank you everyone for watching. I've been Aiden, and this has been Push Square.